Meeting to order. Thank you, everybody. Just a couple updates here. Item D1 regarding the PUD final plan for the Dwayne's Pizza Edition on the 1600 block of University Drive South is continued to the April 4th Planning Commission agenda. So there'll be no presentation by staff nor action taken by this commission. So just an update for everybody. Otherwise, commissioners, you have the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the order of agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item B, the minutes from our February 7th meeting. Everybody have a chance to review? Any changes needed? Take a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the motion passes. Moving on to our public hearing items. Item C1, Bergstein's edition. We'll ask Mr. Kress up to the podium.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Donald Kress with the Department of Planning and Development. Item 1 on today's agenda is Erskine's edition. This item was continued from the February 7th Planning Commission at the request of the applicant, Mr. Stephen Stremick. Mr. Stremick is with us here today. This item is a request to modify a conditional overlay related to sign height. The subject property is located here on 13th Avenue South and University Drive South. Olivet Lutheran Church here, and there's a nursing home here as a landmark for you. The property is occupied by the applicant's business. It's a house, but it's entirely a business. No one lives there. Here are some photographs of the site, clearly before the recent snow here. Again, the building, which is an office, and the sign here, which is the subject of our request today. And as you can see, there's some damage to the sign here. We'll look at that more in a little more detail. And again, the subject property from a couple different vantage points here. The property is zoned LC Limited Commercial with a conditional overlay. This zoning dates from 2008. This conditional overlay limits the sign height to 8.5 feet. The applicant's request that is before you today is to increase the maximum height of the sign to 12.5 feet. Your packet includes a copy of the conditional overlay with this proposed change noted. So it's just the height of the sign we're looking at today. These photos were provided by Mr. Stremick at the time of the impact here last March, just about a year ago, showing the considerable damage that was done to the base of the sign. And it is, as Mr. Stremick will explain, the electronics in it were also damaged. You can't really see that in the photographs, but they were also damaged. The applicant proposes to have a sign of greater height, again in basically the same place on the lot, but just a higher height. So we'll have some more room down here to help protect the sign. And again, Mr. Stremick will go into more detail on that. As stated in staff's report, planning staff's recommendation is for denial. We don't get many of these, so I just want to go through this with your commissioner. The basis of the denial is the applicant's request to modify the conditional overlay is not supported by 2 of the 4 required findings in the Land Development Code. And again, this is all stated in your staff report. Staff finds that finding number 1 is not met because there's been no change of conditions since the property was zoned with the current conditional overlay in 2008. Staff notes that the conditional overlay already provides a sign of considerable size, and no change of conditions has occurred since 2008 to warrant this increase in sign height. Staff finds that finding number 4 is not met because the sign size allowed by the conditional overlay already far exceeds any signage that could be displayed in the adjacent residential neighborhood, such as by commercial home occupations, as well as providing for a larger sign than the commercial business across 13th Avenue South. So there's another sign to the west there, and that is limited to 6 feet in height. An increase in sign height would increase the disparity between the subject property sign size and the surrounding neighborhood, effectively making the subject property more commercial and less neighborhood oriented. Staff finds that findings number 2 and 3 have been met, so only 2 and 4 have not been met. A comment email from the Hawthorne Neighborhood Association is included in your packet. The applicant, Mr. Stremick, is with us this afternoon and may wish to address the commission. The planning staff's recommended motion is stated in the staff report and shown on the screen. And just to note for the commissioner's knowledge here, that if the commission does recommend denial, the project will still go to the city commission for a public hearing and a final decision. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Donald. Any questions for staff? Mr. Stremick, thanks for being with us. Glad you could make it today. You have anything to add?
Yes, we wouldn't be here if a drunk driver wouldn't hit my sign. And the bad part of it was he didn't have insurance. And not only did he not have insurance, the owner of the automobile didn't have insurance either. And we were fine with it the way it was, because I've got to write out a pretty big check to replace this sign. And if you can see, this guy came across 3 or 4 lanes of traffic to hit that sign. He was heading north. If my sign wouldn't have been there, we'd be probably talking about 3 or 4 dead people coming up University. And so what we want to do, the reason we want to raise the height, is going to protect the sign, but we're also going to put buffers. Right now we have a flower garden around it. We're going to raise that a foot, and we're going to put metal pillars in the ground filled with concrete. You see them in a lot of parking lots and around utilities and stuff. We're going to put them in the flower garden so you won't see them. So if this happens again, it doesn't destroy my sign. Like I said, we agreed to the conditional overlay a long time ago because I never thought anything like this would happen, and it did. So we're trying to protect it from future use. Now, if you look around, a lot of Newman's big LED boards, they're right in front of traffic lights. The traffic lights embedded right into them, and people pay attention to that. And the biggest thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to create a safe avenue for us and for the drivers, because if somebody slips on the ice and comes up, they don't wreck my sign. That's all I'm asking for. I'm asking for common sense. You know, and I mean, and I own the property to the north, and I'm in the process of buying the next one to the north. And I also own the property to the east. And I also own a part of the block kitty corner from where I'm at. I own half the block over there. So a lot of the property that's affected is owned by me. And so, and we do have the ability to shut those faces off at certain times. We shut them off at 10 o'clock at night on the one facing north, because that's where the neighborhood is. And when I talked to the fella I bought the house from, or actually it was a female, but the guy that owned it before her, he said he never even noticed the sign. And that's because there's an auto dimmer on it, so the darker it gets, the less bright the sign is. So there's a lot of technology here that is built into this sign that a lot of people aren't aware of. And we've had more compliments on the sign than complaints. In fact, I erased them all, but I had them all saved on my computer, because when people would comment on it, they all said, "I love your sign," or something to that effect. Nobody ever complained about it. And nobody ever wrote me and complained about it. Nobody ever came into my office and complained about it. And I don't know what it is now, but I know when I first purchased that location, and the reason I purchased it, that was the busiest intersection in North Dakota. And I think it still is. So if you guys think that's a neighborhood, I got news for you. It's not. That's a commercial thoroughfare. That's what it is. And that's why we purchased it. And I'll be very frank with you. I agreed to only 150 square foot of sign. If I wanted to be a jerk, I didn't even need the commission's approval to put the sign on the rooftop, and I could have had 600 square feet. But I was a good guy to work with these people. But this was not a condition I planned for. And so I want to be able to, you know, the next time it happens, I don't want it to happen. I'm trying to do everything to mitigate it in advance. I don't know, is there anything else I should talk about, Don?
Mr. Sherman, just to clarify here, I believe you mentioned that one of the reasons you need the height is to accommodate those bollards in there.
Those
That's-
pillars,
That's why
yes.
you need the height. Okay.
For the protection, because if this sign would have been 4 foot higher, that car would have went under it. Well, people don't realize it because it's hidden with those foul bricks there. But there's a 10 foot or 10.5 inch pole in the middle of it that's about 1.125 thick. I mean, if you drive a car into that, the car will look like an accordion.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying. If we were up a little higher, you know, and then the guy, he was a hit and run and the police happened to catch him. You know what I mean? I don't, I'm just trying to mitigate a future problem. So that's what we're doing.
And I guess, yeah, I'm sorry that happened too. That's a really unfortunate incident. I had the same question maybe Donald was getting at, but how did you come to the conclusion on this height? Is that sort of the minimum you had to have to clearance for cars or for the pillars?
Yeah, what we did, I don't know if you guys know my background, but I've got a degree in construction management and engineering, so I'm pretty focused on transportation. My dad was one of the largest highway contractors in North Dakota. But I just figured out what the average vehicle height is and said, okay, let's see what it is to go under it. And then I thought, if we go up another foot, you know, with our flower garden, you know, or go to 2.5 feet, let's say, then we can embed those pillars, we can run them 8 feet in the ground. Somebody hits them, it'll stop them dead. And we'd put two on each of the 4 sides, you know, so we'd have 8 total in there.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan?
I'd just like to say that this is a long, ongoing story. When Mr. Stremick wanted to build the sign in the first place, there was a lot of opposition in the neighborhoods. Jefferson for one, Hawthorne, and then the Erskine addition. We were all opposed to this sign because we don't want these signs in our neighborhoods. It hasn't been, I can't understand who would ever compliment someone on a sign like this. It just is beyond my imagination, but.
Some of the
I think-
wealthiest people in town, that's who called me.
Sir?
Yeah.
I know.
But it's also, I see it as a safety hazard. That's a very complicated intersection, and to have a distraction like that, I mean, the reason it's there is you're asking the driver to be distracted. So I don't think it belongs there at all. It's never been anything that the neighborhoods have liked.
Well, it's gonna be there
Sir,
either way
sir,
because it's
sir,
allowed
this-
to.
it's-
I won in court and the
Just-
judge said, you know what? You guys were involved in illegal taking. I could have sued the city for a lot of money. I backed off.
Yeah,
So,
we've had this,
I was a nice guy.
Commissioner, just wait, please.
okay.
We're gonna have some order here, okay? She's let her finish, and if she has a question for you, you can respond, but
Okay.
don't
Ask
interrupt.
it.
Yeah, all I'm referring to is we've had this kind of trouble before, and I definitely would be opposed to approval of this project.
Do you have a question for the applicant while he's up?
No, I don't. I've heard a lot about it.
Okay. Any other commissioners have a question for the applicant? Anything additional from you, Mr. Stremick?
Yes, there was limited opposition, and I'll tell you why. I went out and got a petition. And everybody pretty much was in favor of it. I went to like 35 households within so many feet that's required for your petition. Everybody I went to signed it. They were not against it. You know, they were in favor of it. And like I said, I also own the properties to the north now and to the east. And at some point in time, you know, I've had a lot of banks approach me about my property. And so I'm going to guess at some point in time, there's going to be a big bank there. Because they like location too. And they're the 800-pound gorilla. I'm not. So and like I said, it was adjudicated in a court of law. on fact and merit, and it ruled in my favor. Now, I could have really stiffed the city, but I said, no, I'll go down on size and I'll agree to your height. And I would still agree to it if it wouldn't have got ran into. The problem is it got ran into. So, and you know, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be alive because what happened to me. So I just want to make sure I get it done correctly. And that way, you know, it will continue. And like I said, a sign there, they're all over town. It's not just mine. And I mean, I sat on every meeting with the sign commission when they redid the sign code. You guys really screwed up. Because you gave Newman's the catch me out when you switched how they measured billboards. That's why you've got so many more of them.
Anything else?
Nope.
I have just one question.
Hold on. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I see we only have one letter of dissent. I didn't see any letters of support.
No, ma'am, as stated in there's, on page 4, it talks about neighborhood comments. We did notify in the 300-foot radius. I believe that's the radius Mr. Stremick was referring to, 300-foot radius, and then also the 3 neighborhood associations and the neighborhood coalition, as is our practice in situations where those, in neighborhoods that have associations. And we did get one call that didn't have much concern, and then the one from the neighborhood association there as well, the Hawthorne Neighborhood Association, Mr. Burgum, and that's all we heard.
And we are in the public hearing, so I was going to ask for if anyone else. Is there anyone else in the audience that, yes, if you could please approach the podium and introduce yourself.
Go to that one. Commissioner, there might need to be a technological trade-off here for a second.
Sure.
Let's see.
I don't know if you need to.
No, just stand at the one.
Hello? Oh, this works. Hi, I'm Simone. I live in the neighborhood just a couple blocks away from the sign at 514 10th Avenue South. I think it's great that there's businesses in our neighborhood, and I think that it's totally fine for them to have signs. I think that in this case, that the scale of the sign is just not appropriate compared to the building. I think that, you know, there's lots of businesses in our neighborhood with signs, but as compared to the building size, you know, as you saw from the picture, it kind of even is starting to eclipse the building. I think I also disagree that this being the entrance of our neighborhood, that this is not necessarily a commercial space compared to the rest of University. I think a lot of our neighbors would agree that, you know, this is a neighborhood setting. It is in front of a house, and a sign of that height is just not appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any questions for the commentator? Anyone else in the audience have any comments for or against? Seeing no other comments, we'll close the public hearing.
Can I speak again?
I will give you a couple more minutes, but you did have your chance, but go ahead.
If I'd have known I needed a letter of support, I would have went and got them. I mean, I'm looking at the way it is. You know, I could have got a lot of letters of support. In fact, I can give you 10 properties right now. And that's me. So that'd be 10 letters of support. Because I own enough properties within the 300 feet to sign 10 letters. So I want to clarify that also. And soon to be more.
Okay, thank you. I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, any other discussion?
I really do think that context matters with this sign, and it really is the entrance into that neighborhood, into our core neighborhoods, coming from the south and coming from going to the east from 13th Avenue. And really the sign itself is, in my opinion, very much out of scale. The brightness is not, it doesn't seem like it fits in with the greater rest of the neighborhood context there. And then, like the public speaker said, that there are quite a few residences that are immediately adjacent, and just because they're not immediately adjacent, like the applicant's property is, doesn't mean that it doesn't affect their context. I'd also like to add, or I guess echo to Commissioner Morgan's statement about the safety of that area. This is also my neighborhood as well, so there is quite a few people that walk around here, and such a bright and large sign really distracts drivers, especially if you're coming north on University. You can see on the map there's that slip lane, the right turn lane. So one of my fears of raising the height is that just takes drivers' eyes, instead of eye level, it'll distract them a little bit further up, which they could potentially miss pedestrians in the crosswalks there. So I guess in summary, the sign itself, and especially raising it, is certainly out of context with the neighborhood, with the city's goals, the core neighborhood's goals. So I would be in opposition of this project.
Thank you.
I would like to say one more thing, that if we're looking forward, if in the case that at one point we have the one ways reversed, we'll have two ways there, and then if we had that huge sign there, I mean, it's bad enough as it is, but it certainly would contribute to even more hazard, lack of quality, and the lack of quality of the life of the neighborhood. What there should be there is a sign introducing people to the neighborhoods, but instead we have this commercial digital sign, which is a distraction and an eyesore.
Thank you.
So I have a question.
Can I go to Art first?
Oh,
Just
yep.
he had his hand up.
I have a question. Donald,
Yes, sir.
if he just repairs the sign and stays as is, correct? I mean, there's nothing we can do about that, right?
There is
The
no
only
action.
issue is 12-footer, or he leaves it right where it is, correct?
Yes, yes, sir, that's correct. If Mr. Stremick chooses to just repair the sign as is, there's no action required by the city.
Okay.
Or not by your commission.
Right, right.
That was my question. Yeah, if we deny this, he can just repair the sign as it is and leave this current
Yes,
sign.
yes, so let me clarify that for everyone here. If your commission would vote to deny this request, the current conditional overlay stays in effect. If you're, and then it would go to the city commission in any case, and if they voted to deny it, the current conditional overlay stays in effect. And just to maybe clarify one thing too, Mr. Stremick, you're talking about a maximum of 12.5 feet. Depending on how you engineer those bollards, it might actually be somewhere between 8.5 and 12.5, right? It wouldn't necessarily be the max 12.5, or
Donald, I guess,
inappropriate?
I'm going to let him respond because you addressed him, but if we're past that point.
Oh,
I think.
sorry, sir.
But I'm going to let Mr. Stremick address that since you kind of asked him.
We already have a sign permit right now to put it in at 8.5 feet, and we don't have to repair it. We put in a brand new one. You can't repair them after they're 3 years old. And I already have that sign permit approved, correct, Don?
I'm not.
I know it is.
Okay,
It's already approved. It's paid for, signed, sealed, and delivered. So if I could have started 2 months ago or 3 months ago and had the new one in, but I wanted to mitigate potential future damage. And so that's why I wanted to raise the sign. And until you get the sign there, you don't exactly know how high you're going to have it. I think this sign actually is only 8 feet. It's not 8.5. Because that was the max. But as I said earlier, it doesn't matter what size the building is. Your code doesn't go by that. It matters by your feet of frontage on your address side. And we're 1155 13th Avenue South. We have 200 feet of frontage. So under the normal code, I could have 600 square feet of sign. And if you have a two-sided sign, you only count one side.
Okay.
So we could have a pretty big sign there, 20 by 30.
Thank you. I'm gonna close off. You got a chance to respond there. So, commissioners, anything else? What are your wishes?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the findings and recommendations of staff and move toward denial to the city commission of the proposed repeal and reestablishment of a conditional overlay ordinance.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? And just a reminder, if this passes, it still goes to the city commission. It does not end here. Seeing nothing else, please read the roll.
Tossa,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
No.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Holtz,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stremick, for being here. Get a chance at the city commission, I'm sure. Moving on to agenda item number 2, and we'll ask Luke up to the podium.
Afternoon, Commissioners. Item 2 is the Adam 7th edition, and this is located on a single property with multiple addresses that are between 2865 and 3861 Thunder Road South. To give you some context, if you can follow my cursor, is I-29 on the east side of the property, 42nd Street towards the west, and then looking a little closer is 30th Avenue South, Thunder Road South, and then 39th Street. The applicant is requesting the zone change from GC General Commercial with a conditional use permit to LI Limited Industrial with a CO conditional overlay. For some site photos, on the top we're facing south from the corner of 30th Street South and Thunder Road South, and the subject property is on the left side of the screen. And as you can see, it's currently under construction for the parking lot and some of the buildings. And then on the bottom, we're facing northwest from Thunder Road South. And then you can see the residential apartment buildings beyond the property as well from that image. It is currently zoned GC General Commercial with a CUP to allow industrial uses in the general commercial zone, changing to LI Limited Industrial with a CO conditional overlay to protect the residential properties from the industrial uses. And you can see, just to give some context, to the south in the gray color is several other properties that are also zoned LI. And for your reference, this is the previously approved site plan showing buildings, site layout, and the road circulation. It's currently under construction for shop condo shell buildings that may include industrial uses. The existing CUP was originally put in place to put the surrounding, or to protect the surrounding residential properties from allowing industrial uses per section 20-0402 subsection R. And this section has requirements such as restrictions to the location where industrial use can be located. And as the site is being constructed, potential tenants applied for renovation permits to fit up some of the buildings that are not allowed under the current zoning and CUP. And in seeing how the site was developing, staff determined that this zone change will give the potential tenants flexibility on their proposed uses, and the CEO will include restrictions to the development to continue to protect the surrounding residential properties. As can be seen in the site plan, it's consistent with the plan that was reviewed during the Planning Commission's review of the CUP to allow the industrial uses here, which was from April of 2022. And these conditions here are essentially copied from the previous CUP, and with most items kind of intended for visual protections of things such as storage and loading docks, dumpsters. Staff has received no inquiries in response to this project. We find that all criteria to be met and are recommending approval with the conditions shown. And that concludes staff's presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On part 1 there, residential protection buffer, what does that mean? The section, is that building fencing? What is that?
So that's the typically on a property, if there's next to a residential property, if there's a commercial or industrial one next to it, then there'll be a 10 or 20 foot wide buffer of trees and shrubs. And there's options laid out in that section of the LDC. But for this, it's applied basically along this northwest line here. And it was previously approved with the parking permits and kind of the shell for several of the buildings. That answers your
Yeah,
question.
so if they have storage, outside storage, they need to put fencing up. What is that, how does that work when you have multiple tenants like this? When you need, for who determines, don't you need to take that whole section where residential is and build an 8-foot fence all the way around? I mean, how's that gonna work? Are you gonna have a one piece with one spot where fencing is and then no fencing around it?
Yeah, I believe the applicant might have some plans for fencing in the whole development, but otherwise there is, I'm trying to see in the restrictions here, but it would kind of depend on what the fit up is for a certain building. So depending where the outdoor storage is, they would need the fence outside that storage area. So, oh yeah, item 4 is what it kind of details, the opaque fence.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, is the applicant here? Would you come up and introduce yourself? Maybe you could add a little context.
Good afternoon. Josh Benson on behalf of SJ Thunder Road. So to answer, and I'm sorry, I didn't know who asked that question, but to answer that question,
He's been called lots of things.
all good, I'm sure. So can you pull up so on the outside perimeter, those are larger shop condos. And so part of our actual covenants for the association is requiring, regardless of outside storage or not, is going to require fencing, 8-foot fencing all around that outside. So they don't have a choice. Now the inside ones, which is a little bit smaller, and I don't anticipate any outside storage there just because it's kind of confined and tight. It's not required there unless they do outside storage, and then it's required within our association docs.
Thank you for that clarification. Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wish to add anything in favor or against? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any discussion or what are your wishes?
I'll move to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? Please read the roll.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Holtz,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Tasa,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Luke. We'll call Megan up to the podium for item number 3.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an application for, this is entitled Amended Plat of Oak Grove Edition. This application, there is one property in this application that I will present on for the next item. So there's difference in what these applications are, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. This is an application to rezone a number of properties here. The general area is bounded on the north, south, and east by the Red River, and then on the west side, depending on where you're at, either Short Street or does not go further west than Elm Street. This is a zoning change to rezone properties within this bounded area from SR2, SR3, which are both single-family residential zoning districts, MR2, multi-dwelling residential, and AG, to a PI, public and institutional zoning district. There are a number of properties here, many of them. These smaller lots that you can see on the north and south side here are owned by the city of Fargo. These are buyout lots. They are not intended to, at least in the very, very long term, ever be intended to do anything other than protection. And then you have Oak Grove Park over here, which is, as I noted, All of these are currently zoned residential. And then lastly, this property here is the Oak Grove School. This first came to our attention with Oak Grove, considering what their expansion might be. And as we started looking at the neighborhood, looked at what was happening with the zoning and thought that rezoning to PI, at least from the city's perspective, and often we coordinate with the park district in these types of situations, to rezone to public and institutional, which is the most appropriate zoning district for public-owned properties such as owned by the city, owned by the park district, or owned by a school. Here's just a couple images. You can see there's not a whole lot that you can see here, but the one on the north, you can see with these red arrows, kind of where your perspective is and where you're looking. North Terrace North looking east, and the south one is South Terrace North looking west. You can see some flood protection also in that image. Back in February, on February 23rd, we did have an open house neighborhood meeting for this application, and for the next item, we kind of did one together to just talk about what the rezoning application was for, as well as the institutional master plan. We had 4 people in attendance of that meeting. Outside of that meeting, we also received 5 inquiries on the application. Mostly folks were just curious about what was happening, the expansion at Oak Grove, how the parking might work. There was no opposition. We didn't receive any letters or anything for that. And we do have Dave Leaker and Dave Beets from the Park District, as well as Bob Otterson with Oak Grove and Brian Burke here. If you have any questions, that concludes staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions for Megan? Go ahead.
Megan, does this include all those lots all the way to Elm Street, except for the one that there's still a house on?
Yep, it does. So anything that has kind of this darker line around it is included in the zoning district. So it's quite a number of properties, but anything up here is either owned by the city of Fargo, the Fargo Park District, or Oak Grove, which is the one here in kind of the brownish pink color.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, so I've been looking into it a little bit this afternoon, and I was confused somewhat between the two. I understand that the Park District is interested in expanding their trails and connectivity. I did talk to a couple of the people that attended that meeting, and they told me that there would be no houses that currently exist moving from Short Street over to, that would be Oak, that would be endangered, is that right, by this change?
So there is no new buildings or residences that would be proposed as part of this. This is a zone more so for the Park District than the city property, more of a cleanup. And then again, similarly for the school. The next item for the institutional master plan, Oak Grove intends to only build within the parcel that they have right now. So anything west of Short Street isn't part of their institutional master plan, and I don't believe they have any changes proposed, if that answers your question, Commissioner Morgan.
Yeah, somewhat. There is a historic overlay in the neighborhood, and I understand that that isn't affected by this project.
That's correct. The historic overlay is on the other side of Short Street, but it is not on the Oak Grove property. It is also not on any of the city-owned property either, or Oak Grove Park.
Okay, so we're not endangering the neighborhood then?
No, nothing that is being rezoned is within a historic overlay.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Any other questions for Megan?
I'd like to hear a little bit from the Park District and, not the right time?
Oh, I know, there, I'm gonna ask them up, but if, I'll just make sure nobody else has questions for staff.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Otherwise, we'll ask Mr. Leaker up. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Dave Leaker, Executive Director, Fargo Park District.
Commissioner Morgan, you can have the first question.
All right, well, there have been years and years of people wishing that this could happen. And I'd just like you to give us a little better idea of the scope of the expansion of the trail system.
Well, Commissioner Morgan, I think in regard to rezoning this as public institutional, I think that's one thing we look at all of our parks are currently zoned that now. And I think, as Megan said, we're just cleaning this up. But along the levee project, they did add additional trail section, kind of right there where it says subject property, and brought that trail into the park off the street on the south side. And with Oak Grove being on the north and west side of the park, I don't know if there's any future plans for a trail connection along the river up to Oak Grove Park. I think you would come back out on the road and then you could progress over to Oak Grove Park. But I guess if there's ever an opportunity in the future to work with Oak Grove, there's potential for a trail system there.
What about going further north of the park? What is the trail like there? I haven't been there.
Right now, the trail just remains within the park and the road. There's currently a connection that goes over to Moorhead where you can see the new lift bridge. And then the trails throughout the park are just roadway trails. And if it was to continue through the park, you know, you've got the area in Oak Grove where the football field is and then the city buyout lots. It'd be a matter of is there a potential to cross Oak Grove property, Oak Grove school property?
Yeah, but if the houses are removed on the riverside of the wall, doesn't that become public property?
But I think, Megan, right, the school property goes all the way to the edge of the river, so it'd be tough to cross that property.
I'll just say at the open house we did have, there was some conversation, so all the residential lots that used to be residential in this, there's no homes there.
Yep.
So there was a discussion, and I think Oak Grove can address it when they come up as well, but there's potential for working with the school on an additional path that goes through there, but there's some challenges there too. So I think that's a future discussion that's not part of this plan, but it's definitely a good topic.
Yeah, and I will note, thank you for that, to both of you and Commissioner Morgan for bringing that up. It's come up a couple of times as far as this application, both the zoning and the institutional master plan, in terms of our working with our coordination interagency with the Park District, as well as the applicant of Oak Grove, the trail connectivity at the neighborhood meeting and even prior to that. And so we've been having some discussions with Tyler Kirchner at the Park District and our engineering department on and I know Bob Otterson can talk about this, but I believe that Oak Grove is receptive to having continued conversations about how we could improve trail connectivity in this area. So it has spurred conversation about the trail connectivity and coordination, and I think there is a plan for a group of folks to walk this area in the spring or when it's less wet to see what opportunities there might be to enhance that connection.
Just one more question.
Go ahead.
Is this approval necessary for this next one? I'm trying to figure out how they work together.
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. So for an institutional master plan, a property does need to be zoned PI, public and institutional. So that is partially why this has kind of spurred the zoning change for Oak Grove, but also kind of the larger zoning change that you're seeing as well.
I have one question for the Park District, I guess. Along Short Street there, you have the path that, on the north and the south, and there's no real path along Short Street. You kind of use that as the connection point. So while I'd support something that goes along the river as well, if there's a way for the Park District to work with Oak Grove to connect the paths along Short Street, that would be really helpful. Because right now you have to get off the path, cross Short Street, ride down one block, cross Short Street again, and get back on the path. And so if there was a way on the east side of Short Street to work with Oak Grove on their property to connect those, that would be great, because it's a gap in the system.
Sure, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I'd like to say one more thing, and that is that Oak Grove has been expanding into the Short Street area and buying houses there. And it seems that within the next case that they will be requesting parking on Short Street. So that would be a further reason to encourage the Park District to work with Oak Grove to get that trail around the outside there. So bikers and walkers wouldn't have to become involved with the parking congestion in that area.
Any other questions for the Park District, or maybe we should ask Oak Grove if they would come up?
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. You could introduce yourself and
thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'm Bob Otterson. I have the privilege of serving more than 720 students, their families, and alumni as president of Oak Grove Lutheran School. And I welcome your questions on this zoning, and then I'll come back up and talk about the next agenda item too when I have a chance.
Great. Is there any questions for Oak Grove? Seeing none, well, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak to this item? Seeing no one else in the audience, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I'll make the motion to accept staff's finding and move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? Please read the roll.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Rosenberg. Foltz.
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to item number 4, same topic.
Item 4 is also amended plat of Oak Grove Edition. This is just a one property right here, which is located at 110, 118, 124 North Terrace North, and 88 and 136 South Terrace North. So this is just the zoomed in here of location of the Oak Grove School. This is an application for an institutional master plan on the site. Here are just some more images looking into the school. If anybody has any questions on this, I can pause or we can come back to this slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about institutional master plans. So these are intended for the properties that are zoned PI, or in the public and institutional zoning district. And what it does is it accommodates larger public and semi-public institutions that have unique development needs when compared to typical building construction. These types of institutions tend to build incrementally over time. Permit review can either be site plan review, which is an administration review, or through an approved institutional master plan. The last institutional master plan your commission saw was the Fargo Park District's sports complex on the south side, which is about a year ago. What an institutional master plan does is it ensures that it's consistent with the land development code, meaning there's no deviation from it as opposed to a planned unit development. And then at full build out, it is compliant with the land development code. And the planning commission, your commission, is the decision-making body. So up on your screen is just a location map of where Oak Grove is located within the Horace Mann neighborhood. This is what is existing today. You can see the building footprint today. You can also see on the east and the north sides the flood protection, the levee that's there. This is what the proposed expansion for the institutional master plan horizon, which is identified to be 20 years. So what you see in green is expansion of the site. The first phase has been identified, though a timeline I don't believe has been set, but which is in the northeast corner, and Mr. Otterson can correct me if I'm wrong when he has a chance to talk. But the master plan notes all of the expansions in green, and as is typical with master plans or institutions like this, that on occasion, just depending on how timing of construction or funding sources become available, phases may change. This image on your screen just shows how the landscaping will be implemented. And as I noted, we did have the open house on February 23rd, where we talked about the zoning change as well as the institutional master plan. For this item, we had 4 in attendance and had 5 inquiries with no noted concern. Most of the questions had to do with how development would happen. There were several questions about expansion of Oak Grove and that there is a maximum capacity identified for them, and then again, how parking would work. The other thing I wanted to note, in the packet that you have attached to the institutional master plan is a parking study that was done, and the parking requirements are met per the land development code, but the study takes a look a bit more in depth of how events work and how off-street parking would work on the streets. And so any changes to anything happening on the streets or that kind of parking is a separate process that the school would have to go through in coordination with our engineering department. So just wanted to quick note that there's a study in there. Your commission isn't asked to approve anything related to parking or changes to parking or anything like that. The other thing I want to note too is that Because this, an institutional master plan would be on a PI zoning district, the recommendation on your screen is a contingency that the zoning change is approved. So you're the decision-making body for an institutional master plan. The zoning change will go on later to the city commission for their review and ultimate review of that, so.
Thanks for that clarification. Any questions? Go ahead.
So we've had a school here all this time and it's been in a SR3 and an MR2 district.
That's,
How has that worked with any work that they've, well, I'm kind of surprised that the school itself didn't have to reapply at some point when they were doing work there to be a PI district.
so schools and parks can be located in residential zoning districts. They can, it's just often now, or what your commission has seen as of late, PI is a more appropriate zoning district. And so when the opportunity comes up, so similarly Hawthorne and Dill Hill, if your commission remembers last fall, kind of was in the same situation where it's just a little bit more appropriate zoning districts. The residential zoning districts have their certain setbacks and building coverages and things like that that really lend themselves more to a house or similar structures. So it's not that the school can't be in those zoning districts. They can, it just has their own setbacks and things that need to be met, so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Megan?
I realize that parking isn't part of the discussion today, but I think parking is one of the biggest problems. Just for clarification, I know this isn't, this is approval to go forward with this, but is the football field going away and are there gonna be new buildings there? Or is that on the other side of the wall?
Go ahead.
It is on the other side, so it does see flooding whenever flooding happens. It's not going away and there would not be expansion over it. One of the things that the Land Development Code allows is in our landscaping section, the exclusion of basically play fields to meet, it allows for removing that area in requirements for landscaping. So that's where you can see up on the screen here, this area in red is calculated and kind of highlighted out and separate to allow for the exclusion of that area in the landscaping requirements. Just for the nature of an open field, you wouldn't want to have any obstructions or things like that.
Yeah, and just getting back to parking and traffic a little bit, I'm wondering if there's going to be an entrance to that public area, the public institution area on North Terrace as well as South Terrace. Because congestion over there is one of the biggest problems for that neighborhood.
So I'd maybe ask Mr. Otterson to answer that question, but I don't believe there's any major changes happening as you go east from North Terrace or how those entrances work, but I'll let him answer that question.
Megan, the parking study, I haven't read it in depth, but I mean, I assume having 40 less residential lots there as well probably helps the congestion a lot. I mean, the on-street parking impacts a lot less when you only have, when you buy out one side of the homes. I was just curious if the parking study addresses how that's changed over time too, or not.
I did read that, and I don't really think the problem with the traffic is from the neighborhood itself, it's from the school. They have a, you know, especially when the classes are getting out, there'll be kids racing back and forth on South Terrace in particular. And it's been a headache. I've known quite a number of people that lived on South Terrace, and they're always just kind of hoping that something can be done. And hopefully this project will help that, alleviate the problems there.
Any other questions for Megan? I'm curious about Oak Grove's policy about letting students sit in the back row at school. Is that a policy in their classrooms? But, can we ask you to come back up again? Yeah. Must be a Lutheran school. That's why it's the back row. Is that?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, again, Bob Otterson from Oak Grove Lutheran School. And sir, you're correct, Mr. Chair. We do honor our Lutheran heritage, and we do sometimes sit in the back of the room and often on the right. So I appreciate that. With me, I have Brian Berg from Zerberg Architects. Brian has been engaged with Oak Grove for a long time. He's an alumnus, and I tell people he knows our campus better than anybody else does. So if I might, open with a few comments, and then I would be glad to take up any of your discussion topics. First of all, again, thank you for the opportunity to review this master plan. I'd also like to extend my thanks to Brian and his colleagues at Zerberg for their work with us on this, and also to your staff in engineering and planning here at the city. Really terrific dialogue with the staff people in the room, and we appreciate their help all along the way. Oak Grove asks you to approve this institutional master plan, and it follows the request for rezoning. Leaders at the school have thought through this master plan and throughout this process contemplated what the next 20-plus years look like. It takes into account the school's current enrollment, our activities, our current staffing, our optimal enrollment, our projected staffing needs around that, and our space needs long-term, and as you mentioned, Commissioner Morgan, our parking. This is all within a peninsula that's bounded by city property, park district property, a river, and a flood wall. We are limited to our 8+ acres where our North Campus has been since 1906, and it is our intent to work within the land we have under our control right now. As part of this process, which I would say started 5 years ago, predates my time in the president's office, we have held a neighborhood meeting on October 10th, where about 20 people were in attendance to talk about what our long-range plans are and then how parking might fit into that. We have engaged neighborhood representatives individually, participated 2 weeks ago, February 23rd, in the open meeting here in this building, and now obviously here at the Planning Commission. Appreciate that opportunity and would welcome any of your questions specifically on this that I can address.
Thank you. I appreciate all the open houses too. I know I attended one. We like to see that and get the comments. Will you just talk about your football field? I mean, it's unique, right? It's on the other side.
Yes.
So maybe just to preempt some questions about how that looks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I realized when I sat down that I had my pointer with me, so I may use this on the screen and save Megan the effort with the cursor if I can do it on that screen over there without bothering anyone.
Sure.
If I can get it there, maybe it won't go. It's not going to lag. Okay, I'll fake it. The football field is labeled on the image on the screen. It sits between the river and the new flood wall. The river crested 4 times last year and affected our ability to play home football games on a field that has been a host to home football games for 60 or 70 years. Because that area still sits on the other side of any flood mitigation, we have no plans to stop using the football field in order to build on it. It just is not feasible. So anything that we talk about in terms of new construction will be within the area protected by the new flood wall and on the property that is outlined, if you will, by that flood wall, by Short Street, by South Terrace, and by, if you will, the leftover piece of Ash Street on the east. Is that a sufficient answer, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman?
thank you. I appreciate that. Any questions for the president? Any questions? Seeing none, go ahead.
Oh, I'd just like to mention, I would encourage you to work with the Park District on the paths. Is that something your administration has been talking about?
And yes, I'm sorry, thank you for the question. We have been engaged with, as Megan mentioned, engineering in particular. There's some interest. And if I could more accurately point at the drawing, because of the flood wall construction a year ago, you can almost get the hint of a trail that could exist because of where the construction trucks drove on what would be on this peninsula, the north side of the flood wall as it comes around the top on that picture. So the trail would come in from the upper left, come along the north side of North Terrace. As it currently sits, the designated trail is routed onto Short Street, onto South Terrace, and then back into the park in the bottom right-hand corner of that picture. We have been in conversation with engineering about using what became a construction trail, if you will, that would go down the side of the wall and veer toward the football field. And we have committed to, when weather and ground accommodates such a walk around. Taking some measurements on whether or not a trail is feasible going around the north side of the football field. So what little land is left between the football field and the river, Oak Grove leaders certainly are committed to exploring that because it would not disrupt any functions at the school. And my colleagues and I acknowledge that it would in fact make for a stronger trail system on the peninsula.
Thank you.
It's very important to the public. I know that so many people are interested in seeing more development or contiguity, is that the right word? On the north side in particular, and it's been difficult because of various obstructions. So this would really help a lot.
Madam Commissioner, I share your position. As someone who now has a parking place at Oak Grove, my wife and I have hauled our bikes to the school and have used the trail system from there.
Okay. Do we have a public comment next?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for being here again. We have lots of lovely seats right up here. If you want to. Anyone else in the public wish to say anything in favor or against this item? Anyone else in the audience? Seeing none, we'll.
One second. I'd like to ask Martha Berryhill to come up and have a word. Come on, you've got to say something. Nope.
We can't. Yep. Okay.
Can't force people to speak.
We're gonna close the public hearing. Martha owes me cookies afterwards. And any questions for Megan, or what are your wishes?
I would make the motion to accept the findings of staff as presented and approve the master plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, we'll take the roll.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Tassa.
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Holtz,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. The motion passes. Just a reminder, D1 is being continued to some future meeting, and we'll go on to D2 with Mark.
Good afternoon. Item D2 is a annexation of a piece of property about 231 acres north of County Road 20, west of Interstate 29. The primary reason for the annexation is the City of Fargo Engineering Department's working on a looped water main that will go up towards the Amazon area. It's kind of evident based on the growth we've had in the last couple of years. We need to probably get 2023 aerial photos. In essence, this is a staff-initiated annexation. There is interest in some development in the portion of this 231 acres, as well as a road that would come up and over. This goes to City Commission March 20th for the City Commissioners to determine sufficient protest, which would be a 25%, and staff is recommending approval. Are there any questions?
Go ahead.
The portion that's highlighted at the bottom, is that the op property?
The op property is the north corner, and I can add,
It's actually above?
this is op. This currently is the Memory Fireworks property.
Okay. Can you tell me why is the interstate included in the annexation? Is that part of actually city land, or is it federal or state?
The interstate right-of-way throughout the city of Fargo is technically annexed in. So with this annexation, it's more of a cleanup just to get the interstate right-of-way, and then there's railroad right-of-way there to the east side. This subdivision up here, we are not ready to be able to provide services. And once we can provide utilities there, then we probably will end up annexing that, which will clean up the rest of this right-of-way going down County Road 81.
So why wouldn't memory be brought into this?
I think there's a couple factors. One, the current ordinances doesn't allow fireworks sales within city limits. It allows it in the extraterritorial jurisdiction. But two, it seems that sometimes when we prematurely annex land that technically the property owners aren't interested in developing, it might prematurely spur development that may not be as advantageous as waiting until the property's ready for development. So in essence, it preserves it a little bit.
Okay.
Any other questions for
Everything
Mark?
else around is
Mr.
annexed.
Rosberg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, what happens with this memory fireworks long-term? I mean, is there some point when you decide everything else around it's been annexed, it gets forced in, or, well, I mean, what happens? I mean, can they sell it to somebody else and can they sit and fight it for 25 years, or what happens? How's this work?
Some of this answer might be opinion, so be
Okay.
careful with me. But I would anticipate the value of that land is going to get to the point where it's going to change hands and someone's going to want to develop it. When you start looking at interstate access through the corridor of the city of Fargo, there's not very much left anymore. And in addition, when you have the NDSU test fields to the south, we're really limited on what new interstate right-of-way interchanges are allowed within the city. So I anticipate that happening probably sooner than later, but again, that's my own opinion. In the meantime, those buildings were permitted as an agricultural building, and we give them a temporary use permit every year to operate a fireworks stand out of it based on the fact that they're not located within the city limits.
And I guess you'd say that this is really being driven by sort of management of city utilities on the east side of the interstate more than it is about development of the west side?
Yeah, I think it's pretty important for us to find a path for that looped water main that's going to go up there and then cut across the interstate going to the east to the Amazon area. There's a development north of Amazon that is going to need some probably higher flows as it starts developing, and the redundancy doesn't exist up in that area at this point.
Just one other question. If Memory Fireworks, if that property was to get sold, that doesn't automatically come into an annexation.
No, the property owner would probably initiate an annexation and petitioning to the city for a owner-initiated annexation.
So right now, as far as sewer and water access to that, with this annexation, does sewer and water end up getting provided to this property?
I would.
I mean, the annexed area, or what happens there, or access to it?
This.
You wanna, looks like Brenda, if you wanted an audible.
They will be outside city limits, so they will not have access to city sewer and water, because they will not be paying those utility fees.
So we're annexing it, and yet it will be outside the city limits.
They're not.
No, the square that is being left
No, I'm not
out.
talking about that.
Oh,
Will the other property, once this becomes annexed, what will the zoning be of it? Or is that to be determined?
In essence, right now, we're working on the actual annexation. The zoning and the plat of the property will be determined in the future. 5 acres of the north side is currently zoned limited industrial from when it was in the extraterritorial jurisdiction. The remainder is agricultural. So as this comes into the city, those are the 2 zoning districts that are automatically applied to this piece of property until there's a zoning change and a subdivision request.
Okay, so anybody that would propose any development in there would have to get it zoned.
Correct. I do anticipate, just as a precursor, I do anticipate that coming in sooner than later, and it's probably going to be a growth plan amendment, zoning change, and a subdivision request.
Okay.
It's probably a good reminder. I mean, annexations don't happen very often. We maybe could go into a little more how the timeline works. Annexation is kind of the first step. Some people haven't been around that long to go through these before.
Not
Am I supposed to laugh at that?
I did.
Any other questions for staff?
Art, that's gonna cost you.
Maybe there's a brown bag. I know Donald could teach a course on annexation, so.
Oh, there we go.
Brown bag for 3 years.
As long as there's cookies.
John can take him to dinner maybe and talk about it. I guess, what are your wishes on this item, Commission?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the roll.
Rosenberg,
Yes.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Holtz,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Tossa,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes. Any other items for us? Anybody? Nope. Okay, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.